Ever wonder why a book, once held sacred for centuries, just vanished from your Bible? What exactly was in that text, so dangerous, so explosive, that the most powerful religious authorities in history decided you were never meant to lay eyes on it? Picture this for a second. Everything you were taught about the origins of evil, about angels, about the universe's deepest secrets, it was all carefully scrubbed clean. Imagine a book that prophets, apostles, and the earliest Christians considered absolutely vital to understanding their faith. A book systematically erased from the official record. That book exists. It's called the Book of Enoch, and what it reveals is so extraordinary, it'll permanently rewire your understanding of the Bible, of Christianity, and of mysteries that have been kept under wraps for almost 2 millennia. We're not talking wild speculation or some modern conspiracy theory. We're talking about a text the Apostle Jude quoted directly in the New Testament, a book the early church fathers studied and revered, a manuscript unearthed among the legendary Dead Sea Scrolls, proving its ancient origins and its critical importance to the most devout religious communities of antiquity. So the big question hangs in the air. Why was it cut? What was in it that made the establishment so damn uncomfortable? Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey, one that'll take you from the backrooms of the Vatican to the dusty caves of Qumran, from the councils where the fate of Scripture was decided to the monasteries in Ethiopia, where this knowledge was preserved against all odds. What you're about to uncover isn't an attack on your faith, far from it. It's an invitation to dig deeper, to understand the true roots of what you believe, to connect with knowledge deemed too potent for the common folk. The Book of Enoch talks about fallen angels who taught forbidden tech to humanity. It lays bare the secrets of the heavens shown to a man who walked with God and never saw death. It details prophecies about the Messiah so precise, it's impossible to ignore their connection to Jesus of Nazareth. But it also holds information that went straight against Rome's authority, knowledge that democratized the sacred, truths the powerful preferred to keep buried. The official narrative tells you this book was rejected because it wasn't authentic, because it had errors, because it didn't fit the approved dogma. But when you examine the evidence, when you analyze the historical context, when you understand the power plays of the era, a much darker picture starts to form. This isn't about tearing down your faith. It's about building it up, because the truth has never been the enemy of genuine spirituality. Real knowledge has always been the path to a deeper understanding of the divine. We're going to explore 12 fundamental aspects of this fascinating story, from the book's origins to its elimination, from its redacted content to its rediscovery, from the theological implications to the questions that still hang unanswered. By the end of this journey, you'll decide what to do with this information. But one thing's for sure, you'll never look at your Bible the same way again. Think of the Book of Enoch as a missing piece of a sacred puzzle, a piece stashed away for centuries, but now available to those with the guts to go looking for it. Are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you prepared to explore the secrets Rome buried? Do you have the guts to question what you've always been told? Then join me on this extraordinary journey, because what's coming next is going to completely transform your perspective on one of the greatest mysteries in religious history. The Book of Enoch is waiting. Its secrets have been locked away for too long, and today, finally, they're going to be revealed. To really get a handle on the Book of Enoch, we need to transport ourselves to a world vastly different from our own. A world where the lines between the sacred and the profane were totally blurred, where religious texts weren't organized into some neat, sealed-off canon. Enoch, according to biblical tradition, was the 7th patriarch after Adam. Genesis tells us something wild about him. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. Unlike all the other patriarchs, Enoch didn't die. He was taken straight up to heaven. This singularity sparked a huge fascination. If Enoch had walked with God and been taken to the heavens, what had he seen? What secrets did he know? What revelations had he been given? The Jewish communities of the Second Temple period, especially between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, developed a rich vein of apocalyptic literature. These texts claimed to unveil the mysteries of the cosmos, humanity's destiny, and the secrets of the celestial world. The Book of Enoch, or more accurately, the books attributed to Enoch, became the most significant of this tradition. It wasn't a single text. but a collection of writings compiled over several centuries. Specialists identify at least 5 main sections within what we now call 1 Enoch: the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Book of Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. Each of these sections tackles different but interconnected themes: the origins of evil through the story of fallen angels, the secrets of celestial movements, visions of the final judgment, revelations about the coming Messiah. For the Qumran communities, where the famous Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, the Book of Enoch was absolutely central. More fragments of Enoch have been found in those caves than of many books we now consider canonical. The early Christians inherited this reverence. The author of the Epistle of Jude quotes the Book of Enoch directly, treating it as authentic prophecy. Several early church fathers, including Tertullian, Irenaeus, and Clement of Alexandria, cited it and considered it a valuable work. So, what changed? Why was such a revered book eventually rejected and nearly lost to history? The answer lies in the transformations Christianity underwent as it went from a fringe movement to the official religion of the Roman Empire. In that process of institutionalization, of centralizing religious power, a lot of voices got shut down, a lot of texts were sidelined, and the Book of Enoch was one of the hardest hit. For the first few centuries of Christianity, there wasn't a single, definitive Bible. Different communities held different collections of sacred texts. The process of deciding which books would make it into the canon and which would be left out was long, complex, and deeply political. The ecclesiastical councils that established the biblical canon weren't just meetings of disinterested saints purely seeking divine truth. They were also power plays, where different factions battled to impose their particular vision of Christianity. The Book of Enoch, with its elaborate cosmology, its angels revealing forbidden secrets, and its visions open to multiple interpretations, posed a real challenge to those trying to establish a uniform, controlled doctrine. The story of how this book survived against all odds is a hell of a story. While it disappeared from Western tradition, it was preserved in its entirety only in the Ethiopian Church, where it's still considered part of the canon to this day. It wasn't until the 18th century that European travelers rediscovered complete manuscripts in Ethiopia and brought them back to Europe. And it wasn't until the 20th century discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls that we could truly confirm the ancient origins of these texts. If this deep dive into the Book of Enoch is blowing holes in what you thought you knew, imagine everything else waiting to be uncovered. This channel exists to explore the deepest mysteries of religious history, to dig up truths that were buried, to honor both faith and raw knowledge. Join this community of explorers. Hit that subscribe button. We don't promise easy answers, but we do promise a straight-up journey to the truth about the lost texts of Judeo-Christian tradition. Now, let's keep going with the most impactful revelations from this extraordinary book. The content of the Book of Enoch is so out there, it's easy to see why it caused such a ruckus. What it reveals directly challenges a lot of the official narratives we've been fed. The most famous section, the Book of the Watchers, tells a story that massively expands on that brief Genesis passage about the sons of God taking human wives. According to Enoch, 200 angels descended on Mount Hermon and swore an oath to couple with human women. But the real kicker isn't just the story of their sexual transgression. It's what these angels taught humanity. The text claims they revealed forbidden knowledge, metallurgy for making weapons, cosmetics, and the art of adornment, astrology, enchantments, the lore of roots and plants. This narrative presents a vision of the origin of evil radically different from the traditional interpretation. Original sin wasn't just Adam and Eve's disobedience. It was also the transmission of celestial knowledge that humanity wasn't ready for. The giants born from these unions, the Nephilim, brought destruction to the earth. But even more significant, the knowledge transmitted corrupted humanity in irreversible ways. The tech of war, the arts of seduction, the secrets of magic, all of it, according to Enoch, has a fallen angelic origin. Research into the historical context suggests these narratives reflected real-world tensions in ancient Jewish communities. Hellenistic knowledge, with its science, philosophy, and arts, was infiltrating Jewish culture. Some groups saw this influence as dangerous, a repeat of the Watcher's sin. But the Book of Enoch contains a lot more than just the story of the fallen angels. Sections on Enoch's celestial journeys describe the secrets of the cosmos in mind-blowing detail. The gates where the sun rises, the storehouses of the winds, the places where souls wait for judgment. The parables of Enoch introduce a figure called the Son of Man, with clearly messianic characteristics. This pre-existent being, seated on a throne of glory, will judge the kings and powerful of the earth. The similarities to the descriptions of Jesus in the Gospels are so evident, they're impossible to ignore. Some specialists propose that early Christians found in Enoch an interpretive framework for understanding Jesus. Others suggest the Book of Enoch was later modified to include Christian elements. The debate rages on, but the undeniable truth is the deep connection between these texts. Enoch's cosmology also presents significant challenges. Its descriptions of the heavens, of celestial movements, of how the universe functions, don't exactly mesh with the visions the medieval church would eventually adopt. The astronomical book, for instance, presents a solar calendar of 364 days, different from the lunar calendar that would later dominate Rabbinic Judaism. This calendrical conflict seems to have been one of the reasons for tensions between different religious groups of the era. Perhaps the most unsettling thing for the ecclesiastical authorities was the direct access to the divine that Enoch represented. Here we have a human being traveling through the heavens, receiving direct revelations, privy to secrets even angels couldn't freely share. This model of direct spirituality, without institutional intermediaries, posed a threat to any centralized religious structure. If an ancient patriarch could receive such extraordinary revelations outside the official channels, what was to stop others from claiming similar experiences? Historical sources preserve traditions suggesting the Book of Enoch was used by groups deemed heretical by the official church. Gnostics, Manichaeans, various sects challenging the burgeoning orthodoxy. They all found support in Enoch for their alternative visions of the cosmos and salvation. This association with heresy sealed the book's fate in the West. It wasn't enough that it had ancient and venerable origins. Its usefulness to the enemies of the official church made it a dangerous text that had to be suppressed. To truly grasp the importance of the Book of Enoch, we need to examine some concepts that are frequently misunderstood or totally unknown. The first crucial concept is that of the Watchers, in Hebrew, Irin. This word holds a richness of meaning often lost in simple translation. The Watchers were angels designated to observe, to guard, to watch. Their sin wasn't just lust, it was the abandonment of their cosmic duty. They stopped watching from the heavens and descended to mingle with the creation they were supposed to protect. This understanding transforms our view of cosmic evil. It's not just about bad guys doing bad things. It's about guardians who abandoned their post, protectors who became destroyers, light that chose to turn to darkness. The second fundamental concept is that of the Son of Man. In Aramaic, Baranash literally means son of man, an expression that could simply refer to any human being. But in the context of Enoch's parables, this figure takes on extraordinary cosmic dimensions. This Son of Man pre-exists creation. He is chosen before the sun and stars were formed. He will sit on a throne of glory to judge all nations. The powerful of the earth will tremble before him. When Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man in the Gospels, his first-century Jewish listeners probably had these Enochic traditions in mind. The title wasn't simply a humble form of self-designation. It was a claim to messianic identity with deep cosmic implications. The third concept worth noting is that of secrets or celestial mysteries. In Greek, mysterion, in Hebrew, raz. Oh, the Book of Enoch is saturated with this language. Secrets revealed to Enoch. Mysteries that can now be known, hidden knowledge made accessible. This mindset of revealed secrets was pivotal for early Christianity. Paul constantly talks about revealed mysteries. The revelation of John is structured as a series of celestial secret revelations. The influence of the Enochic tradition on this pattern of thought is undeniable. But here also lies the danger the ecclesiastical authorities saw. If divine secrets can be revealed to particular individuals, who controls access to the truth? If Enoch received direct revelations, what authority does the institution have to determine what's true and what isn't? The tension between charismatic revelation and institutional authority has marked the entire history of Christianity, and the Book of Enoch sits right at the heart of that tension. Finally, we have to consider the concept of judgment. The Book of Enoch presents an elaborate eschatology where the wicked, especially the powerful who oppress the righteous, will face a terrible reckoning. Kings and princes will be handed over to angels of punishment. Those who hoarded ill-gotten wealth will be stripped of everything. This message had obvious political implications. When Christianity became the religion of the empire, when kings and emperors declared themselves defenders of the faith, was it really convenient to have a text promising divine judgment against the powerful of the earth? We've just seen how fundamental concepts from the Book of Enoch, like the Watchers, the Son of Man, and celestial mysteries, were misunderstood or suppressed for centuries. But I gotta ask, which of these revelations surprised you the most? Is there anything about the Book of Enoch that always seemed murky and now clicks? Drop it in the comments. I dig reading your thoughts, and who knows, maybe your comment sparks the next topic we explore together. Now, let's dig even deeper into the mysteries of this extraordinary text. To truly appreciate the Book of Enoch, we need to dive deep into the world that produced it. A world of clashing empires, threatened identities, and desperate hopes. The Second Temple period, roughly from the return from Babylonian exile to the temple's destruction by the Romans, was a time of radical transformation for Judaism. The Jews lived under foreign rule: Persians, Greeks, Romans. Their political independence was a distant memory or a future dream. In this context of oppression and hope, apocalyptic literature flourished. These texts weren't trying to offer cheap comfort. They offered an alternative vision of reality where present suffering had cosmic meaning and where divine justice would eventually win out. The Book of Enoch emerges from communities that felt marginalized even within Judaism itself. The constant references to the righteous versus the sinners don't just distinguish between Jews and Gentiles. They also reflect internal conflicts, divisions between different visions of what it meant to be faithful to the tradition. The Qumran communities, the Essenes, according to most specialists, represent the clearest example of this phenomenon. They had separated themselves from the Jerusalem temple, which they considered corrupt. They expected imminent divine intervention that would vindicate their position and punish their enemies, including the Jewish religious establishment. For these groups, the Book of Enoch wasn't just entertainment literature. It was urgent revelation that explained their present situation and guaranteed their future vindication. Mount Hermon, where the Watchers reportedly descended, held a special significance in the ancient world. It was the highest mountain in the region, visible from great distances, associated with the divine in multiple cultural traditions. Choosing this spot for the angelic transgression connected the narrative to known sacred geographies. The references to specific technologies the Watchers taught also reflect the historical context. Metallurgy, cosmetics, astrology. All these were arts associated with the Hellenistic civilization that was reshaping the Eastern world. Attributing their origin to fallen angels was a form of cultural resistance, literally demonizing foreign influences. But it would be a mistake to just write off the Book of Enoch as some simple anti-Hellenistic propaganda. Its cosmic visions, its deep dives into the heavens, its grappling with the origins of evil. They hit a depth that goes way beyond the immediate circumstances of when it was penned. Enoch's celestial road trips? They show a genuine hunger for knowledge that's way out there. How does the universe actually tick? What happens to souls once they punch out? Is there justice beyond this life, which, let's be real, often feels anything but fair? These universal questions found a powerhouse vehicle for expression in Enoch. Enoch himself was tailor-made for this gig. Unlike Moses, whose whole deal was tied up with the law, Enoch was from way back in the antediluvian era, before the covenant with Abraham, before the Torah even dropped. That made him a perfect conduit for universal revelation, not just something boxed in for Israel. Plus, the fact he got airlifted to heaven without ever kicking the bucket, that put him in a league of his own. He could have checked out the celestial realms and come back. Or maybe he's still up there, pulling strings for humanity. Understanding this original setup helps us figure out why the book was initially a smash hit, and then later got put out to pasture. In a world of competing Judaisms, communities at loggerheads, and fervent apocalyptic hopes, the Book of Enoch found an eager crowd. But once Christianity got all institutionalized and started trying to nail down orthodoxy, that very diversity that fed Enoch's popularity suddenly became a real headache. The story of the Book of Enoch essentially breaks down into three major acts: its creation and initial buzz, its sideline and near-vanishing act, and its modern-day comeback. The creation phase pretty much runs from the 3rd century BCE right up to the 1st century CE. The different sections of the book were penned at various times. The astronomical book seems to be the oldest piece. The Book of the Watchers and the Book of Dreams came next. The parables are likely the latest, maybe even hitting the scene around the same time as early Christianity. During this stretch, the book had serious street cred. Manuscripts dug up in Qumran prove its importance to at least one significant Jewish community. And shoutouts in later Jewish texts and early Christian writings confirm it was making the rounds big time. The early church fathers treated the Book of Enoch with serious deference. Tertullian went to bat for it hard, arguing that its miraculous preservation through the flood was proof positive of its authenticity. Irenaeus and Clement quoted it without a second thought. And that direct quote in the Epistle of Jude? That practically gave it canonical street cred. Right off the bat, though, warning bells started ringing. Origen voiced doubts about its authenticity. Augustine of Hippo was even tougher, flat out questioning how such an ancient text could have possibly survived. Jerome, whose Latin translation of the Bible would become the gold standard, explicitly gave it the boot. The marginalization phase really kicked into high gear from the 4th century onward. Once Christianity became the official religion of the empire, the councils that hammered out the biblical canon definitively gave the Book of Enoch the cold shoulder. Out west, the text pretty much vanished. Copies stopped being made. Any mentions became increasingly hostile. A bunch of reasons converged for this rejection. The book's cosmology, with its wild ideas, didn't exactly jibe with the interpretations that were becoming standard issue. Its emphasis on direct revelation threatened the church's power structure, and its association with Gnostic groups and other movements labeled heretical. That was guilt by association, plain and simple. But down in Ethiopia, geographically isolated and with a Christian tradition established long before those Western councils started drawing lines in the sand, the Book of Enoch held on. It didn't just survive. It was kept as a core part of their holy scriptures. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church still maintains a broader canon today, including Enoch, alongside other texts that the West gave the heave-ho. The rediscovery phase kicked off in the 18th century when Scottish explorer James Bruce hauled Ethiopian manuscripts back to Europe. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Western scholars finally got their eyes on the full text of the Book of Enoch. The impact was huge. Scholars immediately clocked the text's importance for understanding Second Temple Judaism and the very roots of Christianity. Translations popped up everywhere. The debate over the book roared back to life. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century provided dramatic, slam-dunk confirmation of the text's ancient roots. Those Aramaic and Hebrew fragments found in the Qumran caves proved that the Book of Enoch wasn't some medieval Ethiopian fabrication. It was the real deal. An ancient document through and through. Today, the Book of Enoch holds a wild, fascinating spot in the religious landscape. Most Christian churches and Rabbinic Judaism don't consider it canonical. But its importance for understanding religious history, that's universally acknowledged. And for millions of Ethiopian Christians, it's still sacred scripture, a core part of their Bible. The story of how the Book of Enoch was interpreted, used, and ultimately tossed aside tells us a whole lot about the information control mechanisms at play in the ancient and medieval worlds. The first layer of transformation happened in translation. The original text was mostly composed in Aramaic, with some parts possibly in Hebrew. It got translated into Greek, and from Greek into Ethiopic. Every single translation meant interpretive calls that messed with the meaning. Those Aramaic fragments from Qumran let us, in some cases, compare versions and spot the differences. Some are minor, just vocabulary or style quirks. Others are way more significant, impacting how we understand key passages. The second layer was selection. The Book of Enoch isn't one solid text. It's a compilation of diverse works. Who decided what made the cut and what got left out? Were there other Enochic traditions that didn't survive? The evidence suggests that the Enoch we know is just a fraction of a much broader literary tradition. The third layer, and maybe the most significant, was institutional interpretation. When the church decided the book wasn't canonical, they didn't just shrug it off. They actively discouraged reading it. Mentions in later writings are often hostile, warning against its errors and fantasies. This institutional hostility created a nasty feedback loop. Fewer copies meant less access. Less access meant fewer people who could actually judge for themselves. The official narrative that the book was problematic got perpetuated precisely because almost no one could check the facts. The arguments used to shoot down the book are pretty telling. Its antiquity was questioned, suggesting it was a later forgery. Its content got slammed as fantastic and incoherent, and it got lumped in with heresy. Funny thing is, these same arguments could totally apply to texts that did make it into the canon. The revelation of John is just as wild and symbolic as anything in Enoch. The Song of Solomon got scrutinized for its seemingly secular content, and the pastoral epistles? Many modern specialists consider them pseudepigraphical. The difference wasn't in the inherent nature of the texts themselves, but in the political and theological power plays of those who got to define the canon. The impact of this suppression, it's been long-lasting. Generations of Christians grew up without ever knowing a text that was foundational for early believers. Concepts that were common currency in early Christianity, like Enoch's elaborate angelology, became exotic or just plain suspicious. When the book finally resurfaced, a lot of folks found it weird precisely because they'd been raised in a tradition that had iced it out. What was once central had become peripheral or just plain unheard of. Modern translations also throw up their own challenges. Translating an ancient text, cobbled together from multiple languages, passed down through manuscripts with variants, that takes constant judgment calls. Different translators churn out different versions. So the modern reader? You're getting an interpretation of an interpretation. What's more, the book's pop culture moment in certain circles has sparked new distortions. Some folks pitch it as the truth the church doesn't want you to know, turning an ancient religious text into ammo for modern conspiracy theories. Others read it through contemporary lenses, like evidence of alien visitors or lost advanced tech. These modern appropriations, understandable given the text's inherent fascination, often completely miss the original historical and religious context. The Book of Enoch wasn't sci-fi for its original authors and readers. It was sacred revelation, laying out the cosmos and the human condition. To really nail down its original meaning, it takes a conscious effort to put it back in context. We've got to read the text through the eyes of its first readers, understanding their worries, their hopes, their worldview. Only then can we truly appreciate its historical punch and its ongoing relevance. The evidence backing the importance and antiquity of the Book of Enoch is substantial and comes from multiple angles. Digging into it lets us build our understanding on some solid ground. The most dramatic proof comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, unearthed starting in 1947 in the caves near the Dead Sea. Among the thousands of fragments found, a whole mess of Book of Enoch manuscripts were identified. These fragments, mostly written in Aramaic, date back to roughly the 2nd century BCE, right up to the 1st century CE. Their existence unequivocally proves that the Book of Enoch was making the rounds in Jewish communities centuries before the Christian era. Significantly, copies of all Enoch's sections were found except for the parables. This has sparked debate about that particular section's age and its connection to Christianity. Some specialists float the idea that the parables are Christian in origin. Others argue that their absence at Qumran might just be a coincidence or reflect that community's specific preferences. The second piece of evidence is textual. The New Testament drops clear references to the Book of Enoch. The most explicit is in the Epistle of Jude, verses 14 and 15, which directly quotes Enoch prophesying about the coming judgment. This quote is a real standout. A New Testament author, penning what would become canonical scripture, cites Enoch as a legitimate prophet. They don't treat it like some fable or human tradition. They present it as authentic prophecy. Beyond this direct quote, specialists have pinpointed numerous allusions to the Book of Enoch in other New Testament texts. The Son of Man language in the Gospels, the references to angels who sinned in 2 Peter, elements of the celestial vision in Revelation. The third piece of evidence comes from patristic writings. The church fathers of the early centuries quoted and hashed out the Book of Enoch extensively. These references let us track how the book was viewed over time. Tertullian, writing around the year 200, fiercely championed Enoch's authenticity. He argued that the book had been preserved by Noah and passed down through the generations. For Tertullian, the quote in Jude was all the proof he needed of its inspired nature. Clement of Alexandria and Origen also cited it, albeit with varying degrees of acceptance. Their references show us a text that was widely circulating and taken seriously, even when some folks were expressing reservations. The fourth piece of evidence is the Ethiopian tradition. The Church of Ethiopia preserved the full text of the Book of Enoch when the West dropped the ball. This wasn't some accident. It reflects a theological tradition that valued the text and kept it as part of their sacred canon. The oldest Ethiopic manuscripts date back to roughly the 15th century, but the translation from Greek into Ethiopic, Ge'ez, likely happened much earlier, possibly in the 4th or 5th century. This textual continuity gives us access to a text that otherwise would have been completely lost to history. Finally, archaeological and epigraphic evidence backs up the book's historical context. The geographical references, the cultural practices described, the linguistic patterns, they all line up with an origin in the Second Temple period. What we still don't know for sure includes the identity of the original authors, the exact circumstances surrounding the composition of each section, and the editorial processes that churned out the text's final form. These areas continue to be hotbeds of academic research and debate. We've run through some fascinating evidence about the Book of Enoch, but now I want to know, where are you watching this from? What city or state are you tuning in from on this quest for knowledge about the lost texts of biblical tradition? Drop your location in the comments below. It's wild to see folks from all corners of the globe chasing down the same answers about the mysteries of ancient scriptures. And now, let's roll into one of the most eye-opening chapters of this whole story. To get a handle on why the Book of Enoch got sidelined, we gotta dig into the power dynamics at play in the early church. We can't just chalk up its exclusion to some evil conspiracy, but we also can't ignore the political interests that were in the mix. 4th century Christianity? That was a whole different animal from the 1st century movement. It went from a persecuted sect to the official religion of the most powerful empire in the known world. And with that power came responsibilities and temptations that those early Christians never even dreamed of. The emperors, starting with Constantine, had a vested interest in a unified church that could serve as a cohesive force within the empire. Theological divisions? Those were a threat to political stability. They needed to nail down what was orthodox and what was heresy, which texts were sacred and which needed to be benched. The councils that established the biblical canon weren't just some kumbaya spiritual retreats. They were rife with power struggles between different ecclesiastical factions, imperial influence, and practical considerations about what was manageable and what was just too much of a headache. The Book of Enoch threw several wrenches into this unification project. Its elaborate cosmology, with its multiple heavens, its named angels, its detailed descriptions of how the universe worked, it didn't exactly slot neatly into the theological frameworks that were becoming standardized. Even more problematic was its model of revelation. Enoch got knowledge directly from God and the angels. No institutional middlemen required. That pattern could legitimize anyone claiming similar visionary experiences, effectively gutting the authority of the church hierarchy. 4th century bishops were busy building authority structures that have stuck around to this day. Apostolic succession, episcopal authority, the magisterium of the church, all of it demanded that revelation be funneled through recognized institutions. A text that showed an antediluvian patriarch jet-setting through the heavens and picking up cosmic secrets. That threatened this monopoly on the sacred. If Enoch could know stuff that even the angels didn't freely know, what authority did some 4th century bishop have to lay down the law on truth? The Book of Enoch getting tangled up with groups deemed heretical just cemented its sideline status. Gnostics, with their elaborate cosmologies and multiple levels of celestial reality, found kindred material in Enoch. Manichaeans used its narratives about the origin of evil. Various sects that bucked the emerging orthodoxy cited the book as support. This association created a real bind. A text quoted in the New Testament, respected by venerable church fathers, was also being used by the enemies of orthodoxy. The solution? Discredit it, arguing that its use by heretics proved its problematic nature. It's important to acknowledge that the leaders of the ancient church weren't necessarily cynical manipulators. Many genuinely believed they were protecting the true faith by rejecting texts they saw as dangerous. The line between orthodoxy and heresy seemed crystal clear to them, even if we can second-guess it retrospectively. Still, the consequences of their decisions were huge. A text that had nourished the spirituality of generations was effectively scrubbed from Western collective memory. Knowledge that early Christians considered valuable was declared suspect or flat-out false. The case of the Book of Enoch illustrates a broader pattern. The formation of the biblical canon wasn't some neutral process of recognizing obviously divine texts. It was a human process, marked by the limitations and vested interests of those calling the shots. This doesn't mean the resulting canon is illegitimate. It means we got to understand it in its context, recognizing that other decisions were on the table and that valuable texts got left out. The Ethiopian tradition, which kept Enoch as canonical, represents a real historical alternative. It proves that Christianity could develop with a different canon, including texts that the West gave the cold shoulder. This diversity invites us to challenge assumptions about what's necessarily central and what's peripheral in the Christian tradition. Let's dive right into what the Book of Enoch actually contains, based on the primary sources available. The Book of the Watchers lays out how 200 angels, led by Semyaza, came down on Mount Hermon. The text even preserves an oath these beings supposedly took, mutually committing themselves to their transgression. The descriptions are vivid. These angels took human wives and fathered giants, standing a staggering 4,500 feet tall. These Nephilim devoured the products of human labor until people couldn't feed them anymore. Then they started eating humanity itself, and animals, and just plain sinning against nature. But the account goes way beyond just the physical horror. It specifically details what knowledge these fallen angels handed down. Azazel taught how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He taught women about bracelets, ornaments, the use of antimony, and how to doll up their eyelids. He spilled the beans on precious stones and dyes. Other angels taught enchantments, root cutting, astrology, constellations, the lowdown on clouds, the signs of the sun, the moon's trajectory. This forbidden knowledge covered everything from technology to magic, science, to the occult. The text presents this knowledge as inherently problematic, not because knowledge itself is bad, but because it was handed down prematurely, outside of divine order. Humanity wasn't ready for these revelations. The outcome? Pure corruption. The sections on celestial journeys depict Enoch being guided through the heavens by angels. He witnesses the prisons where fallen angels face punishment. He observes the storehouses of natural elements and the intricate mechanisms governing the cosmos. These visions serve a clear theological purpose. They illustrate an ordered universe, cosmic justice, the punishment of the wicked, and the vindication of the righteous. The celestial geography isn't arbitrary. It's profoundly significant. The parables introduce the figure of the chosen one, or Son of Man. These texts describe this being in extraordinary terms, referred to as he whose face had the appearance of a man, yet whose face was full of grace, like one of the holy angels. This Son of Man pre-exists. Sources suggest he was named before the Lord of Spirits, even before the sun and stars were created. He will sit on the throne of glory, judging all nations. Earth's kings and powerful figures will be humbled before him. The parallel to descriptions of Jesus in the Gospels and Revelation is undeniable. Whether Christianity influenced these sections of Enoch, or Enoch influenced Christianity, or both drew from common earlier traditions, the connection is clear. The Epistle of Enoch, the final section, contains ethical exhortations and eschatological promises. It warns against sinners, especially those who oppress the righteous, and promises vindication for the suffering faithful. A recurring theme is the critique of the rich and powerful. The texts preserve condemnations against those who hoard silver and gold, who build homes on the sweat of others, and who put their trust in their wealth. The coming judgment will reverse these injustices. This radical social message may have contributed to the book's marginalization. As the church aligned with imperial power, texts promising judgment against the powerful became inconvenient. Current academic consensus recognizes the Book of Enoch as an invaluable document for understanding Second Temple Judaism and the origins of Christianity. While there's no consensus on its divine inspiration, its historical and religious significance is widely accepted. Having examined the evidence, the inevitable question arises: how should we engage with the Book of Enoch today? How do we reconcile seemingly conflicting perspectives? The first truth we must acknowledge is that exclusion from the canon doesn't equate to a lack of value. Many texts not found in the Bible hold historical, spiritual, and even devotional significance. The categories of canonical and non-canonical, while useful, are not absolute. The Ethiopian tradition demonstrates that it's possible to be a faithful Christian while including Enoch among sacred scriptures. Millions of believers over centuries have found legitimate spiritual nourishment in this text. Their experience deserves respect, not condemnation. For those in traditions that don't consider Enoch canonical, the book can be read for what it undeniably is: an invaluable witness to Jewish religious thought in the intertestamental period, a text that profoundly influenced early Christians, a window into spiritual worlds that would otherwise remain closed. Reading Enoch doesn't necessarily threaten faith. It can deepen it by revealing the historical roots of concepts we often take for granted. When we understand the origins of the Son of Man language, or the imagery of final judgment, or conceptions of fallen angels, we gain a richer appreciation for the tradition. The second necessary reconciliation is between faith and historical knowledge. Some believers feel threatened by the critical study of sacred texts, fearing that examining the human history of canon formation might undermine the divine authority of Scripture. But this tension is unnecessary. Acknowledging that the canon was shaped by human decisions within specific historical contexts doesn't negate the possibility that God guided that process. Divine providence can work through human means, including councils, debates, and ecclesiastical decisions. What this recognition does do is invite us to humility. If canonical decisions were human, they're subject to human limitations. We can value the received canon while acknowledging that other configurations were possible, and that excluded texts may hold genuine value. The third reconciliation is among different Christian traditions. The fact that the Ethiopian Church considers Enoch canonical, while other churches do not, is a reality we should embrace, not forcibly resolve. Christianity has always been diverse. The differences between East and West, among Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants, across countless denominations, are all part of faith's history. This diversity can be viewed as either a weakness or a richness. The case of Enoch invites us to learn from traditions different from our own. Western Christians can benefit from the Ethiopian perspective, just as the universal church has been enriched when different traditions share their particular gifts. The fourth reconciliation is between the authority of the text and the authority of the interpretive community. The Book of Enoch doesn't speak for itself. It requires interpretation. And interpretation always occurs within communities with particular traditions, presuppositions, and perspectives. Acknowledging this doesn't relativize the text. It means taking seriously that reading Scripture is a communal and traditional act, not merely an individual, instantaneous one. Communities that have preserved and read Enoch for centuries possess insights that the novice reader lacks. Finally, we must reconcile curiosity with respect. The Book of Enoch fascinates for good reason. Its narratives are extraordinary, its visions vivid, its mysteries intriguing. But this fascination must be coupled with respect for the text as a religious document, not merely as entertainment or an exotic curiosity. Enoch's original authors and readers didn't view it as science fiction or fantasy. They considered it sacred revelation, explaining fundamental truths about God, the cosmos, and humanity. Approaching the text with this acknowledgement, even if we don't share all its premises, honors both the document's integrity and our own pursuit of understanding. We've journeyed together down an extraordinary path, from the caves of Qumran to the monasteries of Ethiopia, from the councils of the 4th century to the academic debates of the 21st. We've explored everything from the origins of evil, according to the Watchers, to the glorious visions of the Son of Man. The Book of Enoch isn't just an ancient text of archaeological interest. It's a living witness to a spiritual tradition that nourished prophets, apostles, and saints. It's a voice that was silenced but refuses to be quieted. It's a mirror inviting us to examine our own assumptions about what is sacred and who gets to decide. What we've uncovered together reveals uncomfortable yet liberating truths. The biblical canon we know didn't descend from heaven fully formed. It was the result of human decisions made in specific contexts, influenced by political, theological, and practical factors. This reality doesn't diminish the importance of the scriptures we possess. Instead, it invites us into a more mature relationship with tradition, one that can include gratitude for what we've received and curiosity about what was excluded. The Book of Enoch reminds us that divine revelation is broader than we sometimes imagine, that diverse communities throughout history have found God in different texts, that the pursuit of spiritual truth doesn't have to be confined by the boundaries others have drawn. If you've made it this far, it's because you're one of those people who aren't afraid to ask the tough questions, who value knowledge as much as faith, who understand that questioning isn't the opposite of believing, but a profound form of spiritual engagement. You've shown that curiosity and devotion can coexist, that seeking hidden truths doesn't mean rejecting received ones, that the Book of Enoch can enrich, not threaten, your understanding of biblical tradition. The journey doesn't end here. There's so much more to explore. Gnostic texts, apocryphal gospels, mystical traditions from different cultures, all await those brave enough to venture into uncharted territory. What the Book of Enoch offers, more than definitive answers, is an invitation to read more widely, to think more deeply, to engage with the sacred more authentically. The Watchers descended from heaven, carrying knowledge that transformed the world forever. The Book of Enoch has descended to us, carrying knowledge that can transform our understanding forever. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you leave it as a passing curiosity, or integrate it into your continuous quest for truth and meaning? We've reached the end of this extraordinary journey into the Book of Enoch and the secrets Rome scrubbed from the Bible. If you've made it this far, it's because you're one of those people who aren't afraid to ask the tough questions, who value knowledge as much as faith and tradition. This channel exists for exactly people like you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We have so much more to explore together. Lost biblical texts, hidden truths of religious history, and mysteries that deserve to be revealed. Your company on this path means everything. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And now another video will pop up on your screen, ready to keep expanding your perspective on the mysteries of ancient scriptures. Don't stop here. The pursuit of truth never ends. The watcher angels observe. The Son of Man awaits in glory, and the knowledge that was hidden for centuries is finally available to those with eyes to see and ears to hear. The Book of Enoch has waited patiently. Its moment has arrived, and you've been a part of its rediscovery. Remember, truth always finds its way to the light, even when the powerful bury it, even when centuries pass, even when everyone gives it up for lost. The Book of Enoch is proof of that, and you, having completed this journey, have become a bearer of that knowledge. Use it wisely.